So I am Connell O'Donovan, the Divine Empress of the Church of Mildred Berryman of Fabulous Queer Historians. Just kidding. And we're really happy that you could be here this evening. I'm going to start out with, I like to bring items from my archive or library that are kind of relevant about this topic. And so it's roughly being gay / Mormon BYU. We're going to start off with Multiply and Replenish, which was an anthology that Brent Corcoran did, 4 signature books. And I have an essay in here that I wrote in 1992 called The Abominable Crime Against Nature, A History of Mormonism and Homosexuality. And then, so that's, Jason, I think you guys have copies here, don't you, of Multiply and Replenish? But, so that's one. Then there's Peculiar People, which is about gay and lesbian Mormons. That's from the mid-90s. I have a blurb on the back. My name's on the back endorsing the book. I also helped edit it. Then we get to, oh gosh, I should have started with this. This book changed the entire rhetoric around Mormonism and queerness. Goodbye, I Love You by Carolyn Pearson. This is her story about falling in love with and marrying a gay man at BYU and their life together, their divorce and separation, moving to San Francisco, both of them, and their family, their kids, moved to the Bay Area, and then, hi Barbara! and then his experience with AIDS, and he died in her, gosh, I'm gonna get emotional, in her arms in her house, lying on the couch in their living room. This came out, I think, in '88. I read it immediately. I was really suicidal when this came out, and I cold called her from Salt Lake to California and cried on the phone with her for 3 hours, and she talked me off the ledge. We have been dear friends since then. I have spent many evenings at her home. I moved to California and lived there for 20 years. So I would go visit her, break bread with her. Amazing. She just called me last week. It was really lovely. And then this is her follow-up, which is No More Goodbyes.
Sorry, and she writes all about it in her diaries.
Yes.
And Connell, you're in her diaries too. So
No, I'm not. Stop. Moi? Yeah, No More Goodbyes is a follow-up. And this is a call to action for the LDS Church and its members to really start being humane. Imagine that. But yeah, I went back to this. This book so drastically changed how Mormons interacted with the LGBT community. Before her book, it was pretty monolithically condemnation and fear, and she brought a humanity to the discussion that was so important. Let's see. Oh, and then this is The Vows of Love by Nathan Kitchen. He's the former president of Affirmation, the support group for LGBTQ Mormons. And this is a book that's really amazing about being queer and Mormon, and another call to be loving and respectful towards others. And now we're here with Bill. It's going to be okay. We're here with love in our hearts. This is a safe space, so I'm excited to hear your story. So this is the first slide here. Forced into the closet to survive at BYU in the 1960s. The crazy wild life of Bill Blevins. So let's get started. Tell us about who you are, where you came from, your beginnings.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. I need to kind of clarify, I really wasn't ever gay in the 60s here. I was gay in the 60s in California, so I need to talk about growing up in California and my my family and what it was like in the even 50s and stuff when I was growing up. Something that I think is really important is early on I kind of questioned everything because I was really ticked that Santa Claus was a lie. And so I kind of figured out that, gee, all this other stuff might be a lie too. And so I really grew up having an attitude of, I don't believe anything that I haven't seen. And so, anyway, if you want to show where California, Coalinga, California is, right in the middle of this state in Fresno County, it was kind of interesting that the Southern Pacific Railroad came through because it was a mining town, and so it got named Coalinga because it was Station A on the railroad, so that's why it's Coalinga.
You were born there when?
I was born there in 46?
And who was born there in 1938? Do you remember?
No.
My father.
Oh, that's right. I remember you saying that in a hospital in Coalinga.
The hospital in Coalinga, yeah.
Yes. And it got famous too because of their hospital and stuff, because it kind of regional.
Right.
Another thing about Coalinga that I thought, first of all, my parents weren't religious, really. My mom off and on went to a church. My dad was a Freemason, and we'll get back to that in a minute. But this is my mom and dad, and my only brother, and me, my older brother. This brings up another thing, is that my dad and brother were avid hunters. My dad loved to come to Wyoming and go hunting and all that kind of stuff. And I hated that. I was like a mama's boy. I really kind of was a city boy too. Even though I was in a small town, I always went to my aunt and uncles in LA. And so anyway, I really felt like I was a disappointment to my father, because he really wanted to make me more masculine and more hardworking and everything else. And so I just kind of split the family. My mother and I were one family, and my brother and my dad were another one. And so it was kind of easy for me to just ignore them so that I could be myself. And a good example of that was before I was 5 years old, for some reason I started twirling a baton. And so one of the things that I don't know how it happened that I was twirling a baton, but my mom must have arranged for me to march in a parade in Coalinga. I'll explain more about that. At 5 years old, I was head of a band in the parade. We had a sixth grade band. Anyway, so my town, well, for one thing, my dad was born in Coalinga in 1910, and they were really, everybody, a small town like that. When I left, there was 6,000. I don't know how many before that, but there was only 6,000 people. So he grew up there. Everybody knew him, respected him, and stuff. And I think that's part of why when I became a baton twirler and stuff, that people just kind of accepted that and that who I was. Every year, Kalinga has this festival. Do you want to go to the next one? It's called Horn Toad Derby.
Did you put the horned into horn toad?
Yes. A lot of people call this horny toads, yes. But they started, well, first they had they started racing horn toads, and this was really early on, and ever since, except for during the war, they had a horn toad derby on Memorial Day, and that was the parade that I started marching in, and it's a fun festival. There's a carnival, there's food trucks and all the whole thing, like Pride, but and for a small town, it's really a fun annual thing.
Bill, how did you learn to baton twirl? It just came, it was just natural, or
yeah, it was. I really wondered about that because my mom did ask a guy from Avenel, which is the next town from Kalinga, to give me a couple of lessons about baton twirling. And I don't remember ever doing the lessons, but I remember he was probably, in college. And I remember having a crush on him at 5 or 6 years old. Anyway, and then when I was a junior in high school, there was a baton twirling camp in Santa Cruz, and I went for a week there, and one of the national champions was one of the teachers there. So that was really the only time I had training. But when I was a senior, the last year, well, I had competed a lot of times at band reviews and stuff, but there's an all-Western band review, and when I was a senior, I won first place twirling drum major in 1964.
Wow!
And that was the highlight of my life. So, and that's the band that I was drum major of and stuff. So
I do love a man in a uniform.
I loved the uniform, and but I always had to take off the shako, the big hat, so that I could twirl my baton.
Your crown got in the way.
Yeah. Back to my family. My dad was a Freemason, as I said, and I was a De Malay, and
what does that mean?
they're the young Masons are in the De Malays until they, and the girls are Job's daughters.
Okay.
And so the De Malays and the Job's daughters have dances together and stuff. And so that was my social life, sort of outside of school. Anyway, my dad, because he came to Wyoming to go hunting all the time, he had all these guides from Star Valley, Wyoming, from Afton, Wyoming. They were all like bishops and stuff. And so he got curious about the Mormon church, and he was reading this book about Mormons and Masons when I was growing up, and the connection about that. So that was really the introduction about my dad wondering about a church. But it didn't take for me. But because I'm such a theater person, I decided I wanted to go to a church. I went to the Episcopal church because there was pomp and circumstance, and it was, yes. And so that worked really well for me because they didn't seem to care if I believed doctrine or anything. But it also gave me a feeling that the persecutors or the guys that would bully me kind of didn't so much, because I was a churchgoer, and that worked for me. So that's then when I was a senior, I was applying for colleges in California. I applied to San Jose State and Sacramento State and stuff, but I was really worried because I was not there were a lot of drugs and stuff starting about then.
And not in the 1960s.
This was the 1964. And my parents were both smokers, and I hated cigarette smoke. I just was paranoid about it. So one of the sons of the guys from Afton, Wyoming, was on his mission to Fresno, and he came to our house. And while he was talking to my mom, setting up another hunting expedition, anyway, I talked to his companion, and he says, "Well, you should go to BYU. They don't allow smoking. You don't have to worry about the drugs and stuff." And so I applied, and as a bonus, BYU said I could understudy their baton-twirler, who was very famous, 4-time national champion. And so I thought, okay, I'll do this. But I had no idea what it would be like. I'd never been out of California before. My mom put me on the train in Sacramento to come to Provo, by myself. And when I got here, I really loved it. I thought BYU was really the kind of place I felt very safe compared to places in California that weren't as safe. Anyway, so the first thing when I got there is I met the guy who was supposed to understudy. Ron Marriott was their 4-time national champion, and I don't know what understudy meant. All I remember is that like if you do a fire baton routine, I was in charge of dipping his fire baton in kerosene and lighting it for him to go out, and I didn't, but I enjoyed being in band because I kind of was familiar with that. But Ron Marriott also was in International Folk Dancers, and he did his baton twirling in Europe, all over the place. When they went to Europe, the International Folk Dancers were really famous for going to all the folk dance festivals. Anyway, he told me when I started band, he said, you ought to join the folk dance group. So I changed my major to recreation, and I started taking Latin American dance and ballroom dance and,
What had your
pardon me,
what was your major before you changed it?
psychology.
Oh, okay. That's quite a difference.
And part of the reason for that was it seemed like psychology at BYU was different than anything that any other school was offering. So I wasn't comfortable with how that worked for me. So anyway, I was so involved with the folk dancers and stuff because Ron was kind of, there were two tiers of folk dancers. There was like probably 12 couples that got to go to Europe and all over the place and perform. And there's another second tier of folk dancers. They took 5 couples of us, and we were in program bureau, which, next slide, I don't know if you've ever heard of Janie Thompson. Did the Young Ambassadors and Lamanite Generation. Now they call it Living Legends. She was head of the program bureau, they called it. And so they took these couples that were in folk dancers.
I'm sorry.
Sure.
So program viewer, that's sort of the entertainment program.
Yes, it was entertainers, and she was kind of in charge of all those other entertaining. Thank you for the question. So anyway, next slide. I love going on. We went to all the American Indian schools and wards all over the place in the western states, a little bit into Canada and stuff, to recruit Lamanites to come to BYU. And we had several Lamanite people in our group. This was just a song and dance kind of thing. And I got to twirl my baton in that too.
Does
So-
everyone know the reference to being a Lamanite? No.
Go ahead.
It's the Mormon term for Native Americans.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So anyway, one of the things that happened while we were traveling, this guy on the other side, Ron, another Ron, I had really had a big crush on him. I realized that one time when I went home after a performance with Ron Marriott, the baton-twirler, we kind of fooled around a little bit, so he kind of knew that I was interested in something like that. And this other Ron just invited me to go on a date. And I thought, people are finding out about me. Because this guy asked me on a date. And I had such a crush on him. And this is gonna maybe a little too, but after our date, we went to we all were in Deseret Towers, and I went to his room.
The dormitories.
Yes, in the dormitories, and I went into his room, and right away he came over and started to unzip my pants, and I thought, yeah, my reputation has gotten around, and so I had such a crush on him. I said, could we get to know each other a little more first? And then we continued to be roommates on these tours and stuff. So I had to sleep in a bed with him, and he wouldn't do anything with me, and I was all frustrated. But so finally I asked him, why weren't you were going to approach me before, why not now? And he said, well, because I believe in the church. And so, and I said, but I don't really even believe in God. How do you know that God is there? And he said, no, because when you're doing something that you shouldn't be doing, there's a darkness that comes over you, and the light is God. And I thought, okay, I'll believe him. So I asked him to baptize me because I wanted him to like me. So when he just said, I don't think I can. I didn't know that he had already probably been in trouble and so anyway, so then I went in this whole program bureau tour group that I was part of kind of became my family. And I told him, I'm getting baptized and all this kind of stuff, not really realizing what I was doing. Remember, I'm only barely 19, so when we came back from one of the tours, they told me to first of all go to the standards office. I think it's called, I can't remember what they call it now.
Honor code.
Yes.
The honor code office, yeah.
Honor code. They told me to go there. I needed to have a talk with them. Mary B. Jensen, which you saw in the other slide back when, the director of the folk dancers and the president of folk dancers and 4 or 5 other guys were there. And they said, we understand that you might be a homosexual. And I didn't deny it. And so they said, leave immediately, you're expelled. And so, I was in shock. I didn't know what do I tell my parents? I'm being kicked out of school in my first week of coming back for my sophomore year. So it was interesting because that's where I had to go. And when I got there, there was a lot of the folk dancers I knew were waiting to talk to them. And when I left, there were more waiting. And altogether, I counted 14 of other folk dancers that were being called in to be expelled.
About what year was this?
1965.
Okay. I think that this is the first round of what they called the witch hunts.
Oh, definitely. They were trying to purge.
Yep.
And there were so many, I didn't realize there were so many of us folk dancers that were, and I probably would have liked to know more of them. One of the neat things about the folk dancers is, I don't remember, it was over 100. Our final in folk dancers for the class was naming every one of them. So we had to learn everybody's name. Anyway, I didn't know what I was going to do. I was ready to just pass out. Because they just told me to leave.
That's horrible. I'm sorry.
It was scary.
Nasty thing to do to, especially a young person who's adrift in the world. And
well, Ron Marriott, the baton-twirler, also wasn't a member of the church. When they told me, they said there's one option, you can go see Spencer W. Kimball, because he's the only one that can allow you to get back into school. And I didn't even know who he was. I mean, I wasn't a member of the church.
And he was still an apostle at the time.
He was just an apostle.
And later became president of the LDS Church.
And he was, I think, just in charge of deviants at BYU.
Yeah, well, all over the church.
Yes.
He and Mark Peterson had special assignments that dealt mainly with the homosexual problem, but I think more of it fell onto Kimball's shoulders than on Peterson's.
Well,
They were, both Markey and Spencer Kimball were part of the board of directors, and they reported directly to David O'Kay.
oh,
The board of directors of BYU. Yes.
BYU.
Yeah.
That makes sense. So one of my friends from Program Bureau had to drive me up to Salt Lake to Spencer W. Kimball's home. And again, there were other folk dancers leaving and some waiting when I left. But so I went into a little office in his home, and he asked me, I'm, as you can probably tell, I am pretty open and I just talk about anything. And so he asked me a lot of questions about my past, and I don't know if he realized this at the time, but from the time I was in junior high till, all through high school and stuff, I had been having sexual experimentation with guys, mostly straight guys that were just, young guys seeing what they could do. And I told him the stuff that I had done back home. This wasn't a BYU problem. It was, but he would ask me questions like, did you check out the guy next to you at a urinal at a public restroom? Did you, he said, did you commit sodomy? Again, as a non-member, I wasn't acquainted with the word sodomy. I said, I don't know what that is. And so when he told me, I said, oh yeah. And he said, well, what kind of lubrication did you use? And wanted to know details of everything like that, which I found kind of interesting. But it was an hour-long interview with him. And I just remember he wanted to kneel in prayer when we were getting done. And then he walked me to the door, and before he opened the door, he looked back at it and he said, now never tell anybody that you did any of this, especially if you end up marrying a woman. Don't ever tell them. And then he said, and talk in a deeper voice. Which, coming from him, was interesting because he had
the Yoda voice.
The Yoda
he sounded like Yoda. Do you think how he interviewed you? Did it feel intrusive and inappropriate? Was it creepy?
Oh, I love talking about it. I didn't think of it that way at the time.
No, how he was, how interested and detail oriented he wanted you to be. Did you think that was inappropriate?
I don't think so at the time.
Oh, okay.
I afterwards, when I thought about it, I thought everybody, an older person asking questions about, I just wanted to be honest.
Well, but asking what lubrication you use.
I thought that was interesting.
That seems,
I just said,
that seems past a boundary of what would be an appropriate question to ask in an interview with a teenage boy.
I didn't know about lubrication. I just thought spit and saliva,
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry.
No. The reason why I ask is over the past 40 years, I probably interviewed well over 20 guys who had interviews with Kimball, and they often report feeling very uncomfortable with the intrusiveness of his questions and his physical touch.
I don't remember that.
Yeah. Okay.
I also remember that I didn't have the church background to know that, like, be worried about that. I just thought he was an adult trying to find out what I had done.
Right.
And it wasn't till the very end that I told him, oh, but I've already told I'm going to get baptized. So he said, oh, well, then we can let you back in on probation.
Back into BYU.
Back into BYU.
Yeah.
So that was my solution, was to join the church. And I didn't have to tell my parents that I had been kicked out, but it started to get really uncomfortable when I went back, because people wondered why all at once I'm not dancing or in.
So part of that probation was you were not allowed to baton twirl or dance or.
Exactly. It was nothing in the.
Did you have to change majors?
Yeah, well,
Or you not be in the recreation program?
I didn't. I just didn't take any classes in dance or anything. I really worried that if I did, I would find somebody else to fall in love with, and both Rons were gone. So
Were they expelled, do you think?
no, I don't know about Ron. The one that I really liked, I think he was.
Okay.
But Ron Marriott went back. He was from Las Vegas, and he went back to be a dancer in Las Vegas in one of the kind of nudie shows.
Okay.
So
like a Chippendales kind of thing?
no, I think just the big splashy things with headdresses and that
okay.
kind of, yeah, one of those things. But he was basically a dancer and a very good performer in life. Can I read just, do you want to put up this slide about, I think I want to read this out loud. After I met with Kimball, I found out what he really did at BYU. This is one of his lectures there. Homosexuality is an ugly sin, repugnant to those who find no temptation in it, as well as to the many past offenders who are seeking a way out of its clutches. It's embarrassing and unpleasant as a subject for discussion, but because of prevalence, we need to warn the uninitiated and the desire to help those who may already be involved in it. When I found out that that was his attitude toward me, I really considered what a different situation I was in now, and but I'd already arranged for housing with the son of my Spanish teacher and two other guys I didn't even know. And when all this was going on, he used to send me a letter every week asking me how I was doing, if I was masturbating or...
Kimball did.
Kimball did.
Please tell me you have some of those letters. Did you keep them? Please.
Actually, I don't have them. My ex-wife might. The thing I got a kick out of is on the envelope it always said SWK and I thought that was sealed with a kiss.
Oh my God! Not Spencer Woolley Kimball. That is funny. So can I give you a homework assignment?
What's that?
Can I give you a homework assignment?
I haven't talked to my wife in 30 years.
Could your niece talk to her?
Yes.
Those letters need to be archived, please.
I know. Well, let me tell you, there's a little story about that.
Okay.
When I was married, my wife and I were living in Bountiful, and our house flooded. All of those were in a file cabinet underwater. So the Relief Society took all of those to a greenhouse and laid them out to dry. So they may be around or maybe not.
Okay. Anyway, back at BYU, and you've returned.
And one of the guys that I had just moved in with, I hardly even knew his name, kind of figured out that I was in trouble for being gay, I guess. And he asked to have me kicked out of the apartment. So I had to go back to the guy who gave me a ride up to Salt Lake for that interview, and I told him I don't have any place to live, and he let me live with his family for a little while. But he had been a missionary, and so he got permission to teach me the discussions, as we called them there, and so that I could be baptized. And the whole kind of the family that I had of being the whole program bureau traveling company that I was with, they all kind of were behind me to get me baptized. And so I got baptized at the Richards building at BYU in the swimming pool. And that was in December of 65. Yeah, I think. And so then I tried really hard to believe into this new thing that I just made a commitment to do. The guy that I had fallen in love with wasn't there. I didn't have him to encourage me to really believe in God and stuff. So I kept thinking, well, I've got to really believe this stuff, and I wasn't there yet. So I decided that I wanted to go on a mission. Maybe that would help.
It doesn't.
So the problem is, if you're not a member for a year yet, you're not supposed to go to the temple until you've been a member at least a year.
At least 1 year, yeah.
But the only way I could go on a mission was at the end of the following summer, which would have been in September, not December. So I wouldn't have a year in the. So I had to go back to Spencer W. Kimball's office and ask for permission to go early to the temple because to go on a mission. Because I was already very, very enthralled with Latins. I loved. I had even dated a girl from Guatemala. When it came time to go on a mission, I asked to go to Guatemala. And they sent me to Guatemala, which never happened.
Never.
Yeah. And
I thought it was a dartboard at a map.
I was, everybody was surprised because they did. So I went to Guatemala and El Salvador on my mission. And the thing that I remember most about it, besides loving the people, they're such humble, wonderful people, was I taught dance and put together shows and twirled my baton And
I love you, Bill, so much.
so I did all of this on my mission. There was a branch president that always called on me to come to teach his ward dances and stuff to put on a show. And he invited my companion and I to stay the night at his house. And in the middle of the night, he crawled in bed with me. And I just finally had to say to him, I've been in trouble for this. No. So, but that was one of the things that happened on my mission. And I kept, for some reason, we tracked it out, every gay guy, and you know, taught him long enough to realize that we had to not do that. Anyway, so I ended up baptizing 85 people on my mission, which,
That's a lot back then.
well, in Central America, it was okay. I mean,
Yeah.
it was when they were doing that. But I do know that when I came back, I kept inquiring, and none of them were active anymore.
That none had remained active.
None of
Yeah.
them had. There's a thing about loving people, and they feel that, and they get involved with you and stuff. Is kind of what I did. Anyway,
We have about 15 minutes left. Is
Okay.
that right?
yeah. Ooh, you gotta.
Yep.
I'm sorry. I need to go faster.
Yeah.
So anyway, when I came back from my mission, I went to. I was in the Spanish major by then, and I went to. That's fine.
That is the next one?
Yes.
Yeah.
I went to Mexico for summer school, and I met Jean on my trip to Mexico. We dated for the summer. When we got back to BYU for our senior year, I finally proposed to her. Her parents did not want her to marry me. I'm sure they had a clue that I was not the kind of person that should be getting married. But anyway,
Woman.
my parents were elated because I was going to marry a girl, you know. So anyway, we got married we graduated in 1970 on a Friday and got married in the Salt Lake Temple on Monday. And her dad had been a branch president and very faithful. They were all converts, though. So when we were in Mexico, when we were after our finals were over and stuff, we went to Acapulco. And when I was in Acapulco, I just kind of wandered down the beach with a Mexican guy. and immediately after that happened, because it had been 5 years since I'd ever touched another guy, I went to Jean and told her, hey, I've been in trouble for this. And I told her everything about all the problems I had been through. And we still got married, and we had 4 sons, and we were married for 9 years. And during that whole time, I was still not faithful to her. I didn't have any other women or anything, but
there were men.
There were men, and every time it would happen, it would take me a week or two, but I'd finally go and tell her, this is what I've done again, And I felt so bad for her because I knew it was killing her, but there's a saying, I just couldn't help it. And I thought we've got to get to a point where both of us recognize that this was a mistake.
Yeah.
And so she finally asked me for a divorce. In the meantime, the part of the reason was I had really fallen in love with another guy who happened to be the second counselor in a bishopric up in Bountiful
Oh dear.
with 6 kids of his own. And I knew he wasn't going to leave his family for me. But when my wife asked me if I would leave her for him, I kind of told her I think I'd have to, because that's how much I was in love with him. So anyway,
That's gotta hurt. Both of you, but
Both.
especially her.
yeah, it had to hurt a lot. And she was so faithful and everything. And I never believed in prayer or the other stuff that everybody's supposed to, but so I felt. So anyway, during the time that I was in love with Jerry, I met Steve in a park, and I invited him over to meet my family. I had worked with his wife at the church office building, and he had been excommunicated and fired and arrested and stuff. And so Steve just kind of spent a lot of time with my family. And finally, my wife, when she asked for the divorce, I didn't realize it. We got divorced in the 26th of December of 79. And in March, she married Steve, the guy I was sleeping with. And
Wow. The webs that we weave. Gosh.
no kidding. So, yeah, and I kind of just recently found out that she really wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. And so he was there to support them. And I had to intervene with the bishop one time to tell him, if they're in love, they should get married. Yeah, don't worry about it, because I had already come out and been very comfortable with my new life as soon as I was excommunicated. Anyway,
When were you excommunicated?
before I was divorced,
Okay, so 1978?
1978, it was 79.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
But early.
middle, yeah.
Middle.
Pioneer Day.
Oh.
And my counselor and my wife were allowed to go to the court. And when I got to the court, this is the hardest part it was 6 hours, and not only did I have to tell them all about my sexual escapade.
Oh, I'm sorry. This is the church court.
This is a church court.
Okay.
Thank you.
I thought
Thank
we were
you.
talking a legal court.
No, a church court. And but I realized immediately that they were there to get more names. They wanted to expel anybody that was working at the church office building or that I knew.
Just an interjection. There was this system that the church had set up where they would, when they encountered a gay, lesbian, Mormon, they would say often, they would manipulate you into giving the names of others that you knew about, and then they would send that information through the church to the leaders that were over those people, call them in, and then they could get more and more and more. That was the system that they had set up, how they could find all these people to punish and excommunicate them ultimately. So you got caught up in that. Basically.
I got caught up, and I realized that was their sole purpose when I was there, to gather more names.
Yep.
And when I got, actually, when the stake president gave me a ride back home, he said, you can never talk to any of these homosexuals again. And I walked in the door, and Jerry, the guy I was in love with, was on the phone. And he said, what in the hell happened? And I couldn't even talk. And I never saw him again, which...
This is the guy in Bountiful?
Yeah, which broke my heart.
Oh, I'm
And
sorry.
anyway, so then I had to deal with the fact that I was a church employee. I worked at the Genealogical Library for 6 years. And,
The photo there.
oh, right. Thank you. Very
Because I
good.
was working there too, but not until in '79. That's when I
Yeah, that's
started
when they
I
came.
started working at the Genealogy Library,
And
and that's where I met Brent Metcalf. Where's Brent?
Can you step out for a minute?
Oh, okay, yeah.
the bad part is that then I had to call my supervisor and say, should I go to work? And so I went into work, and they had the guards come and get me at my desk and took me to HR. And when I got to HR, his desk was as big as this table, and he had photos of men completely covered with his desk, and said, do you know any of these guys that you didn't know their name, but could you point them out and we can, yeah. And he wanted me to go through that. And then the guards took us, a lot of the departments had their employees' pictures up on outside of their office. And so he wanted me to go each floor and point out anybody else. I don't remember pointing out anybody,
Good for you.
but I did during in the excommunication court.
At the court, you did give them names.
I did give him names. I didn't give them Jerry's name, but my counselor said, I know who he is because I counsel him too, and I'll get in touch with him to be sure that he's getting
The help he needs.
the help he needs from his bishop. Anyway,
Wow.
so after I did that, they walked me to the door and said, don't ever come back in the building. We'll send your stuff home. And then I was able to, I worked at 7-Eleven for a while and a janitor with other, anyway, trying to get a job. I finally got my job at the university as a cataloger at the University of Utah 2 years after I was,
In special collections or just at the regular?
no, just
Marriott?
regular, cataloging, which is just, doing the cataloging cards. Back then, you actually made cards and stuff. Yeah.
The catalog file.
Yes,
okay.
yes. So that was what happened. I didn't see my sons, for 22 years. And finally in 2002, one of my sons was going to the U, and I had been working there for 20 years then, and he called me and said, do you want to come and meet us? And so I was able to see him.
Wow, after 22 years?
After 22 years, I was able to see my son, and then he introduced me to the other sons. Of course, I never got to see them grow up or anything like that. And we started out pretty close to each other, but now we see each other maybe twice a year. But three of them came to my 80th birthday on May 2nd.
Yeah.
It was held out.
Yeah.
But it was held where?
Yes, that was Doug arranged, that's my partner, Doug, arranged for it to be at the Pride Center. And so
So your family came to the Pride Center for your 80th birthday.
my very, 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 very Mormon sons came to the Pride Center for
That's
my
awesome.
80th birthday.
Nice.
That's my story.